If you're not a race driver, stay the hell home. Don't come here and grumble about going too fast. Get the hell out of the race car if you got feathers on your legs or your butt. Put a kerosene rag around your ankles so the ants won't climb up there and eat that candy ass. That was a quote by Dale Earnhardt, one of the most famous race car drivers of all time. Speaking of race car drivers, my dad was a race car driver back in the 50s and 60s, and a pretty good one from what I'm told. But he retired before I was born. If you ask my mom, he decided to retire. If you ask my dad, he was told to retire. But I get it. They were starting a family, and racing is dangerous. But even though my dad retired as an active driver, he continued to attend the races as a spectator almost every weekend for the rest of his life. So I grew up not at the local airport, but I grew up at the local speedway. And it was a fantastic place for a kid to grow up in the 70s. On any given Saturday night, we had all this freedom, we had unlimited pizza, all these fast, colorful, loud race cars, and these drivers. These guys were local legends. They were primarily blue-collar workers. They'd work on their car in the shop at home every night. And on a Saturday night, these guys were our heroes. It was a magical time. But every once in a while, not every week, not every year, every once in a while, one of these guys would get killed in his race car right in front of us. That was a scary thing for a young kid, and it was sad. But it was somehow very much accepted. A guy would hit the wall, he'd be killed, the state police would come out, take a few measurements, they'd clean the racetrack off, and they'd go back to racing that night. That's just the way it was. It was just accepted. But one day that all changed, and that day was February 18th, 2001 at 5:16 p.m. That was the day that Dale Earnhardt was killed on the last lap of the Daytona 500 in a seemingly minor accident. This wreck just didn't look that bad. We'd seen a lot worse before this. We've seen a lot worse since. It just didn't look that bad. But in reality, this was a very violent event inside the race car. Dale Earnhardt suffered a broken sternum, 8 broken ribs, a broken ankle, and he died instantly from a basilar skull fracture. A basilar skull fracture occurs when the occipital bone at the base of the skull fractures, and it severs the arteries that supply blood to the brain, and the victim bleeds to death almost instantly. This is a very graphic but very quick way to die. And this is also the exact same injury that killed those drivers I saw as a kid. The real tragedy here is that Dale Earnhardt was actually the 4th high-level NASCAR driver to die of this injury in just 9 months. Can you imagine if the NFL killed 4 quarterbacks in 9 months? The drivers that died just prior to Earnhardt, Kenny Irwin Jr., Tony Roper, and Adam Petty, look at their sponsors. Dr. Pepper, Texaco, Sprint. These guys were very popular athletes. But even their deaths didn't spur NASCAR to act. It took the death of Dale Earnhardt, their leader, their icon, before NASCAR would react. And react they did. They spent over $1 million investigating the Earnhardt accident. That's unheard of. That's almost an aviation-style investigation. They built a multi-million-dollar R&D facility in North Carolina to investigate these types of accidents. They installed data recorders in every race car, much like the flight data recorder in an aircraft. They built a brand new car called the Car of Tomorrow, designed to better protect the driver in an impact. They installed safer barriers at every racetrack. The safer barrier is a steel and foam liner that goes up against the original concrete wall. They call it a soft wall. These walls are not soft. I can tell you that because I hit one in my go-kart at about 70 miles an hour. The wall didn't budge. My go-kart was destroyed. But when a race car hits it at 200 miles an hour, the wall does its job. You can see in the picture of the number 32 truck hitting the wall at Daytona. The wall is completely deformed. It's doing its job. It's dissipating and absorbing the massive deceleration forces before they get to the driver. Without that soft wall, that driver almost certainly would have been killed. He walked away. NASCAR did all these things. But they stopped short of doing the one thing that almost all experts agree would have prevented the death of Dale Earnhardt, those 3 other drivers, and all the drivers I saw as a kid. They failed to mandate the use of the HANS device, the head and neck support system. The HANS device is a carbon fiber shroud that goes over the driver's shoulders and clips to the back of his helmet, and it keeps his head in line with his torso in an impact. It is specifically designed to prevent the basilar skull fracture. They failed to mandate the use of the HANS device, and in October of 2001, Blaise Alexander hit the wall head-on at Lowe's Motor Speedway and died instantly of what? That's right, a basilar skull fracture. The next day, NASCAR mandated the use of the HANS device. They had lost 5 drivers in 17 months. That was 23 years ago. How many drivers do you think have died of a basilar skull fracture in the last 23 years? That's right, none. Not a single fatality. That is incredible. Why am I telling you all this? What does any of this have to do with being a student at Embry-Riddle in a speech class? Forget about Dale Earnhardt and race cars and skull fractures. What I just described to you was the successful implementation of a safety management system, an SMS. An SMS is a process of managing risk within an organization from the top down. In other words, management buys off on it. Whatever organization you're involved with, or whatever risk-based activity you partake in, I want you to start thinking about safety differently, because safety first is a lie. Remember that. Safety first is a lie. You walk into any manufacturing plant, any factory, somewhere you will see a sign on a wall that says something like 173 days without an accident. Awesome. That's good, I guess. 173 days, nobody cut off a finger, that's good. 200 days would sound better, but 173 is not bad. That factory takes up 9 acres. That sign is 12 inches long. Don't tell me safety first. The product is first. Production is first. The event comes first. Next month, we're going to have the Super Bowl. 22 guys running into each other head on for 4 hours. There's nothing safe about that. Next month, we're going to have the Daytona 500. There's nothing safe about that. In May, we'll have the Kentucky Derby. 20 horses racing side by side at 40 miles an hour. What could go wrong? There's nothing safe about these events. Yet we're going to have them safely with all the component parts. Good helmets, shoulder pads, good shoes, safe race cars, soft walls, strong horses, good stadiums, security. All the component parts of these events hold together by the glue that is safety. Safety is not the goal, it is the glue. You live a life full of risk. You need a method within your organization or within your personal life of managing that risk. Think back to my opening quote with Dale Earnhardt about the kerosene rags and the ants. That was the safety culture at NASCAR in 2001. 23 years later, drivers are no longer dying. If a safety management system can work for an organization that had such a broken safety culture, then it can work for you. Thank you.